Hello, you're listening to Talking Utter Slot, the podcast about growing men having fun playing with toy cars. I'm Scott, and this week I'm joined by my good friend Gareth Jex, and we're going to reminisce about the time that we revolutionised the UK slot car exhibition industry. That's maybe it. Well, you've got to start big. The background to that very bold claim is that way back in the mid-noughties, Gareth, you were a promotions manager, whatever it was, for the National Slot Car Collectors Club, and I was working at Toyota GB, and it was the 25th anniversary, and we wanted to have an event, and out of that kind of soup of ingredients, you came up with, I think I've got to give that you, having a big slot car event. Yeah. And then the reason that's important, and the thing we really want to talk about today, is that having done that once, we then were inspired to have a rally, because we used to look at the Spanish events with envy, rooms full of big tracks with scenic stuff on it. And we toyed with going, and then we decided, I suggested, let's do it right here. And then I gave you the challenge. So winding back to the beginning, so before that first one, so the 25th anniversary, just give us a bit of gap. What was the challenge you'd been given by the club, or was it something you wanted to do on your own?
I've been a member of the NSCC for a few years. Like everybody, you collect all these things and you think nobody else does it, and then you come across this club that you suddenly realise, there's lots of other beardy weirdies out there that are doing the same thing. So I joined the club, etc., and it was a great club. And it was, I think, I read one of Brian's articles the other day, and he was saying, when it was started, it was pre-internet, and you kind of forget that, and it was pre-internet. So it was a printed journal that came out every month, and I remember right in the early days writing an article about collecting MG slot cars. And, I bought all these MG and I thought I had quite a good collection. So I wrote a little article about it, and I, won the article of the month and got a free slot car, which was great. And that was all good. At the time, I owned and worked at a design agency doing exhibitions and events. So that was my background, and it kept me pretty busy all the time. But it was obvious that as the club wanted to expand, it was dwindling numbers and all that kind of stuff. We just wanted to get it out there a bit. So we decided we needed an event. There were swap meets, all these little swap meets, and the NSCC did organise quite a number of swap meets. But they kind of, you've referenced them in the past. When you go to a swap meet for slot cars, it's old men walking around a sports hall, and it's quite dingy, and it's not inviting.
Yeah, and not to disparage it in the sense that it's what we had, and I think you're quite right. The NSCC created and kept that sort of thing going way back when. And interestingly, as a little sidebar, the NSCC are taking over the running of the Orpington swap meet from this autumn, because Phil doesn't want to do it anymore. So there's kind of a full circle. But by and large, they were a school/stroke village hall with some tables, and people brought crates of cars, and that's what it was. It was perfectly fine, and we enjoyed it, but there was a chance to do more, really, for the anniversary.
I guess from my perspective, I then joined the committee and was responsible for promoting and expanding the membership, if you like, and getting new members. And the only way to do that really was to get in front of the public. And unless you knew about these swap meets, there was no way you were going to go and just happen upon them. It needed to be something bigger, better, bolder, more razzmatazz, more everything, really. So that's what I suggested to the committee, that we do a big event. And naively, I guess, I thought it'd be relatively straightforward. And we started looking for a venue. And that was the biggest problem, actually, finding the venue. Because I remember we said, right, okay, we'll go to the NEC in Birmingham, somewhere central, in the middle of the country, and everybody can come, blah, blah, blah. They wanted telephone numbers, which I kind of knew I should have known, because that was my job, kind of thing. So I knew that wasn't going to happen. So we think Gaydon or something like that. They were all too expensive, so it nearly fell flat straight away. And then you and I started talking because we used to race at Farnham Slot Car Club, which I don't know where they are. Well, you went the other week, did you not?
Farnborough, you must come along.
Farnborough.
Yeah.
I haven't been yet. I know you must. I must go actually. I might need to buy a car.
The subtext of all this is to draw you back into the. That's a whole other podcast about you giving up slot cars. Yeah.
So anyway, so we got chatting, and you said, I'm pretty sure you said it in the car or something like that. Yeah, you were. We were talking about this the other day, weren't we? So we went to the Abergavenny Slot Rally in Wales, and on the way back. No, it wasn't the Abergavenny. So anyway, whatever it was, we were chatting, and you said, "Oh, I could do it. We could do it at my office." And I sort of said, because I knew you quite well at the time, but I'd never been to your office, and I thought, yeah, that's not really going to cut it. And I'm picturing my office, a few desks and tables and a few drawing boards, and I'm thinking, no, that's not going to work. But anyway, he said, come down and have a cup of coffee. So off we went to Epsom, and I had a look around your office, and you said paint a picture, which I'll try and do. So if for nobody that's been, I guess a lot of people haven't been to Toyota at Epsom, it's a big office, beautiful on its own, surrounded by a little moat and all that kind of stuff, big car park, blah, blah, blah. And you walk in and basically you've got a Toyota stroke Lexus car showroom surrounded by people's offices. Cars hanging from the ceiling, marble floors, lots of glass, cafe, everything. It was like, okay, I completely and utterly underestimated Scott's office. Actually, this is perfect. So once we had that, the rest kind of followed on, really. So, like you said, thanks to you, if we hadn't got that office and that venue, it definitely wouldn't have happened, I don't think. Or if it did happen, it would have been not as spectacular. So,
well, I mean, I think it's like a lot of these things. It was a happy coincidence that you did your job, building exhibition stuff, and so you had all those contacts and experience. I did my job that happened to be in a building, and for reasons that I've never fully understood, they let me turn it over for the weekends.
I think it was wasn't it something like your corporate social responsibility or something?
I think I may have that's the Trojan horse I may have used to get it through. But then, so what's interesting to me is because the way I summarise it is that I kind of went, yeah, look, yeah, you can do it here, but of course the work of turning an open plan. I mean, a large open plan area that was sort of 3 stories high and sort of glass on 3 sides, and then the other sides were effectively open plan offices. Yeah. So, although it looked like a big space that you could do that, there wasn't easy to just put in some tracks and some tables.
No, we had I basically went begging to all my suppliers and people like that, and we cobbled together walls. I mean, I think we probably put up about 100 meters of walls just to, I didn't want anybody sort of wandering around your offices, nicking paperwork and actually nicking your die-cast collection from the cabinets and all that kind of stuff.
And when you say walls, we should emphasise these were floor to first floor, so they were 20 feet high, maybe more.
Yeah,
they were big walls. Yeah.
So it all had to be sort of secured, and that, if I'm honest, that was one of my biggest concerns. Was obviously a lot of the people that were coming we would know. But actually, the whole point of doing this event was to get people there that we knew, that we didn't know. And, families, kids, older, whoever. We wanted to get them all down there new. So I wouldn't know them. And, we had no idea who was actually going to come. And it was interesting. I was reading Brian's article about it the other day because, this is going back some time now. And my memory's not as good as it used to be. But I remember him saying we managed to get an advert for the event. Or not an advert, but a discussion on Radio 2. And that brought in loads of people. And then your army of PR people started putting Toyota official press releases out and all this kind of stuff. And it kind of mushroomed. And it was great. So it was really good. So we had the background. It was just then what we put in it.
Yeah. So so much of this was about you cashing in on contacts and favours. I'll put it that way if you don't want to. So you had to phone up sort of people that you'd bought a lot of slot cars from, basically, and convince them to turn up at what they would think was a car showroom for the weekend.
Or your offices, if you say we're going to do it at Toyota's offices, they think, it's no better than the town hall down the road. But again, I've sent a few pictures and stuff. I mean, the traders were were difficult. Understandably, I guess that it was at that kind of time when traders were beginning to do their own swap meets, organise their own swap meets. The NSC were kind of dropping off organising their own swap meets. And there was a little bit of a kind of, well, okay, yes, we'll do it, but we don't think it's going to be particularly successful. So, when we were booking tables and selling tables, I'll take a table, or I'll take two. And then quickly they realised as the event opened, damn it, I should have taken 4 or 6 or whatever, because it was big. But most of the swap card dealers came on board quite quickly, but they were, I hope they're probably not listening, so that's fine. But
oh yeah, they are. Yeah, everybody listens.
Millions.
Everybody.
But they were important to be there, but they weren't actually going to be the bits that excited the new people that came along. We needed tracks, we needed things to play on, we needed all the manufacturers, and that was the really difficult bit. That was the tricky bit, getting the manufacturers on board, because again, they had no comprehension of what we were sort of talking about scale wise. Was it going to be successful? Was there going to be lots of people there? Was it worth it? And of course, they're not all in the UK, and that was one of the big turning points for the NSCC. I can't remember when they'd sort of changed their name, because it used to be the National Scalextrics Collectors Club, and then it changed to the National Slot Car Collectors Club, which made more sense. But it meant Ninco, SCX, Carrera, Scalextrics, Vanquish MG, Slot-It, all those at the time, I guess, new manufacturers.
Well, that was kind of it. I mean, in comparison to today, when there's, I don't know how many, I've never counted them up, but if you go from the kind of boutique ones through to there must be 20 slot car makers, as it were. Back then, it really was a relative handful.
Yeah, but I mean, because they're all, most of them were overseas, so it meant a big investment for them to come. But it was, some of them had UK distributors and all that kind of stuff, but it was really difficult to get them to commit to saying, yes, we'll come, yes, we'll build a track, yes, we'll do something exciting, yes, we'll get behind it and promote it and all that kind of stuff. So that took a lot of effort. The upshot of it was, though, the benefit of it was, it was kind of the catalyst for them discussing the NSCC more. So that event helped to then gel, and you had members of the NSCC who became like liaison officers with SCX, Ninco, and all this kind of stuff. And I think, I'm not a member anymore, but I think that kind of carries on even today.
I believe so. Again, like you, my membership lapsed a while ago, and I think, and then, again, probably a separate discussion on its own. But just to paint that picture, you said pre-internet, you did not see pictures of slot cars. You might see a car in a shop. That probably maybe there was 1 or 2 websites that were almost dial-up level of, a picture would emerge after a while. So that monthly publication, which was sort of on glossy paper and had a colour picture in the front and in the middle pages, was often the only time you saw some of these, something as exotic as an SCX car.
So once we got the manufacturers on board, that was good. Swap meet dealers were on board, that was great. And that was like the background. And then we needed an activity. So again, fairly naively, and we just went to all the different slot car clubs, styles of racing, everything, you name it. We just approached all of them and said, will you come? And quite a few of them did. And it was great. So we had, I've forgotten the name. Is it Briscoe, British Slot Car Racing Association? Basically the jelly molds on million-mile-an-hour cars. We had them. We had
dragsters.
We had the sort of thing that you and I used to race at Farnham, hard shell, plastic bodied cars. What else did we have? Oh, we had drag strip racing.
Dragsters.
Huge. Amazing. I'd never seen it before that weekend. It was great.
And the HO guys, there was
forget all this stuff. So we had kind of a bit of everything. So there was all these different flavours floating around, and just by luck, it just seemed to come together. So it was a lot of work. And then again, the last bit of the glue was, okay, how are we going to get all these racers to come? because they were all saying, "Yeah, I don't buy slot cars. I make them and all this sort of stuff." So we decided to have a race. So we had the 25th anniversary slot car championship, and which again I got all the manufacturers to sponsor. God, this is really coming back to me now. We had, from memory, it was like 5 classes, like Hornby, SCX, Ninco, Slot It, and Vanquish MG. That was it. And all the clubs had to race these cars at their own clubs, send in the results, and then nominate a winner. And then all the winners from that came to the event, and they raced on. I can't remember how many tracks it was, probably a dozen tracks, big race tracks. And then there was a winner, and I made a trophy with gold plated. Remember them? Gold plated slot cars?
Vanquish cars, I think they were.
Yeah, well, not all of them. There was one from each manufacturer, and they were all on this big thing. And then we presented at the end of the weekend, and that was it, really. And you, of course, then went completely over the top and managed to get Formula One car, rally cars, real ones. These are not toy cars. F1 simulator, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it was fantastic. I mean, there's some photos of me. I saw some photos of me the other day. I looked a lot thinner, which was probably good. But I think somebody commented it. I looked quite ill, and it was a lot of stress. And again, because I did it as a job, people saying, "Oh, what can I do to help? What can I do to help?" And it's like, well, you can go and do that, but just make sure you've done it and come and tell me you've done it. So, I call these things. I'm a bit of a control freak. But anyway, it worked. I think we had about 1,800, 2,000 people through the door. And a good thing about it was that, I don't know, maybe half were seasoned slot car enthusiasts of some flavour, but the others weren't. And hopefully they sort of picked it up and went with it, really. So that was that.
Well, I think I remember the sort of slightly bizarre sight, but welcome, where I can't remember if this was the Saturday or the Sunday, where literally queuing down outside the building, where families with young kids and stuff coming to, as you said, not really knowing what they were coming to, but and the kids were getting a chance to play on tracks, and Dad was getting his old interest reignited, and there was a general bubble of people having a good time. And I think the other thing, don't forget, we had a dinner, didn't we, in the evening? So everybody was. So we spent Friday evening building. You and the crew that you somehow or other coerced into doing this. Built all these stands and tracks and things. Saturday we held the public event, and then Saturday night we had a dinner as a sort of celebratory dinner for the club members. Yeah, and then came back on Sunday morning and did it all again,
and then ripped it down.
Yeah. So people listening may say, "Why they're galloping through this? This sounds like a really significant thing. Why are they covering that off in 15 minutes?" And the reason I'm covering that off in 15 minutes,
it's the aperitif.
It's just to paint a picture. So, having done this thing, which was great, and there was when going into it, there was no plan that it would be coming. But lots of people said to you, because they knew you'd organise it, that do it again. And you'd mentioned going to Abergavenny. So there was a few of us who had a habit of going down to Abergavenny in Wales for the slot car rally, which at the time was a kind of one-off event that the guys did. And you and I were kind of rally interested, and so there was a bit of a crossover there, and the guys down there are very interested in the rallying, obviously. And our habit on the way back was to stop at a pub somewhere in Hampshire for a meal and talk. And I like to claim the credit. I'll do it. I'll be bold about it. But over dinner, I said, we were saying in the aforementioned Spanish rallies, we said maybe we could go, and wouldn't it be great? And we thought, well, we'll just get beaten. We'll spend all that money to get humiliated. We don't know what we're doing. So I said, well, why don't we just do it here? Why don't we have our own slot rally here? Build the stages. We can do it in the building. Blah blah blah. Now that must have been somewhere around about November, December time.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing for me is that between then and the following September, because we're coming up on the anniversary, we had another 2-day event. It was called Slot Rally GB, which had a huge number of tracks, stages. Again, hundreds of people coming to take, well, not hundreds taking part, but there may have been, I don't know.
Well, I think there were. Yeah, there were.
Yeah,
at least
So, well, the cars that I've got that were entered have still got the number 86 sticker on them, which seems to have been my entry number. So
There's an
there was at
Avery
least,
label. Yeah.
there was at least. But and I like to see people say, "Oh yeah, I kind of claim the credit for saying, let's do it here." But of course, you did all the work, because it was easy for me to go, "Yeah, we'll just do that again," because I hadn't done anything of that stuff. And the course of putting it back, but it then. Hopefully, what you're going to remember is that when you then went to visit or called all these people before,
Yeah.
again, sorry, that you'd called before, they were more ready, willing, and able. Was that the recollection of what it was like?
It is the recollection. I don't know how accurate that recollection is, but it was certainly easier. And I think the one thing that sticks in my mind that I was reminded of the other day when I saw this photo was Mark and Julie Scale, because they've always been great supporters. I mean, any stupid idea that I've had, they've always been on board, and they've been really good. And Sean's been good and all that kind of stuff. But I do remember looking down from the balcony at Slot Rally GB, the second event that we did, and I think Mark and Julie had like, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 tables at the first one. This time they had a small village. It was huge, massive display.
It was a big L shape, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was just enormous.
Must have been,
I thought, oh, okay,
20 feet long.
We've kind of got it now. And I think all the other manufacturers were back on board. Some of them not so much, obviously, because it was sort of rally orientated. So I don't think Vanquish MG were involved anymore because they didn't make rally cars. So that's fair enough. But yeah, it was a lot easier. The pain of starting the event and all that kind of stuff was considerably easier. And bizarrely, it must have been about that kind of time when, we were saying it was pre-internet. Well, this must have been that kind of time when the internet started to, and slot cars started to come together. I can't give you a date, but at that time, so marketing the event was easier. And again, we said, well, we want to do a race, a rally. How are we going to do that? Well, we get all these people to, invite them down or, join the rally. The advantage of doing that was, of course, we didn't have to have any pre-events. We didn't have to have rallies before. People could just turn up. I can't remember how many stages there were. Do you remember?
I'm good to see 20.
Yeah,
but that's I'd have to. That's doing it without looking at anything.
Yeah, I would say that's probably something around that. Yeah, high teens, 20, something like that. So we had 20 stages that they had to get through over 2 days, and just like normal slot rallies that me and you have done now, they just went around in small groups and tackled each stage, stroke track as they went along. Some of them were dead simple. Some of them not so simple, and that was the other thing. We wanted to make it, I guess, let's be honest, as good as we could, as the Spanish ones were. That was the goal, wasn't it?
That was well. We had, again, none of us had been to any of the Spanish events, so we're basing this on the few images and things that we would have seen. And essentially, what we saw were big, mostly Ninco tracks that had scenery on them, and the maybe buildings with rocks and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I think, so going through I won't remember all 20, but I can remember the one I built, but we'll come back to that. But you had some built, people brought some, so I know that the Wolverhampton Club brought down a very nice wood routed track, which was a relatively small, I think it was like 2 sheets of MDF that kind of clipped together, but it was beautifully sort of painted as a little test circuit. There was a Ninco track which was built using both Ninco black track and Ninco rough track. They were the slot, which was of course a nightmare for any car which didn't have any ground clearance. There was Skeletrix track. There was a number, I think SCX through the
through their UK distributor, Steve. Is it AEC? I think he put together about 4. Possibly more tracks. He really got on board with it, and it was great. That was really good. But
so there was that.
Yeah, go on.
So I the one I made, I said, because I had a whole load of Britain's farm things. So I made, and I bought a whole load of green Skeletrix track from the old horse racing sets, and made a track that wove between sort of barns and farm buildings and tractors and cows, and painted the surroundings green, so in theory it looked like a farm stage. And a bit like you, when you stood on the balcony and you looked down, Then there was all these tracks mixed in with all the stalls. I think there was also the hill climb, which is probably worth the conversation on it.
That was okay. So that was, how are we going to make this special? Let's build a hill climb. And again, we wanted to make it this hill climb stage. We wanted it to be, fantastic, fully scenic, la-di-da-di-da. So again, not that my suppliers really had any choice, but I basically said, can I come down and use your workshop and all your materials and all your tools and for free? And can I build a slot car track? Yeah, no problem, Gareth. And of course they think, well, it's going to be about the size of a ping pong table. Not quite. And we started building this thing, and I've forgotten the guys' names. There was a father and son there that were quite regular racers, and they came down and helped a lot. A lot of the Farnham guys came down and helped a lot, and it was really good. And we just started building this thing, just laying out these tracks with those Ninko loops. Are they loops, aren't they? Yeah. Hill climb loops on it at the bottom. We just started building it and saying, okay, well, we'll just build it on the floor and see where it goes, and then we'll start to elevate it, because we wanted to, to be a hill climb. So we built it, and it was all good. And, lots of timber. I mean, this thing weighed a ton. And it probably took about, a month and a half worth of weekends. And we built this thing, we finished it, and we stepped back. And you provided that Britain's 132nd castle or something like that, and that was at the top.
No, the castle. Regular listeners may know there's an on-running joke. Yeah, I had a habit of going on eBay and just searching for 132nd and seeing what came up. Yeah. Most of the time it was die-casts or Britain's farm animals or speedway bikes or all that sort of stuff. But there was a castle, sort of medieval. In fact, I think there was a range of castles, actually. It was a medieval castle, and we bought one for the hill climb. And I bought one, which famously is still in the box. I've not taken it out of the box. But just to present scale, so lengthwise, on the ground, this thing was at least 15, maybe even more, 20 feet long.
Oh, feet. Don't work in feet.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
I'm old.
It was probably about 4 or 5 meters wide. Yeah, 4 meters wide.
Okay. And then it wound up fairly steeply.
Yeah.
And when we installed it in the building, a measure of how high up this went, it reached the upper floor. So it was going up at least another 20 feet by the time you went up there.
Yeah. But you put a deadline on it. That was the thing.
Oh, did I? I don't remember this.
Well, no,
was it a good
deadline? You didn't put a deadline on it, but there was a deadline, because we started building this thing and we wanted to get it finished. And you said, let's take it to Goodwood.
Uh-huh.
So whenever it was that we decided to do this event.
So winter time. So yeah, I think it was like December.
So when's Goodwood? Goodwood is sort of
July,
June,
July,
something like that. Oh, it's the it wasn't the, it was the hill climb, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh, we put it on the Toyota stand. Oh, fantastic. Brilliant. Bit of promotion, marketing, the NSCC, so you can get some new members and all that kind of stuff. Brilliant. So that was the deadline. I do remember this. Again, I had to ring up one of the suppliers and say, right, we built this thing. I need you to take it down to Goodwood or something like that. And it's like, okay, yeah, no problem. Where is it? Oh, it's at such and such. It was near Uxbridge somewhere. We got the lorry. The bloody thing wouldn't fit in the lorry. So we literally had to cut it in half before we could even get it on the lorry, take it to Goodwood, run it for the whole weekend. Because we had all these Formula One drivers coming along and driving on the hill. And, of course, they all wanted to drive whatever they were driving. So we had Formula One cars going up the Rally Hill climb, which was quite funny.
Yeah.
And
we even had Lord March. Even there's a picture somewhere of Lord March having a go on it. Yeah,
so that was great. And I've still got the Toyota ice cream jacket that you gave us all for all the volunteers.
The F1 replica gear. Again, we should say for the American and Canadian listeners, when he says lorry, we mean truck.
Yes,
so like a U-Haul or whatever.
Transportation device. Anyway.
Transportation device. But, but it gives an impression of how big this thing was.
It was huge.
And it took up a big part of it. But again, in terms of the impact, even for us who are fairly, used to kind of manufacturers doing things like this or slot car events at all, when you're faced with something which is like literally a wall of track going up, and it's fully painted rock faces and scenery, and it's got a castle at the top.
Yeah, and it's got stairs up the side, so the marshals can climb up the side and climb over the top of it. So yeah.
I don't want to think about the health and safety implications.
No, they did. Well, there was a handrail. I do remember that.
Handrail. Yeah. So that was certainly one of the stages. And I think there was. And one of the things I did that appealed to me about rallying in general, and where I remember exerting some influence, was rather than just having kind of a one class overall winner thing. And people who know me will recognise I was self-interested. I said, let's have lots of different classes. So, there was an overall winner, but there was best Scalextric car, best Ninco car, best Carrera car, best blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And you had arranged prizes and everything for every class. And the reason I wanted to do that was to encourage people who said, well, I'm never going to win against these guys, but I've got this Carrera car, or I've got this, in theory, very unsuitable car for any kind of competition, the experts would say. But, if you enter it against the same cars, you're not going to do too badly.
Yeah.
And I think the most ridiculous one where I think I ended up, did I win it? I can't remember. I may have done. Was the and I'm going to, as I'm speaking, I'm going to forget the name. Who was it made that very limited run of Celica's nice Celica models? Was it Team Slot?
GOM. Was it GOM?
GOM. GOM, which stood for, I can't remember what GOM stood for. But yeah, GOM.
I think me and you are probably the only people in the UK that have one.
So I think I have got some sort of medal somewhere or other for that. But it was something I think picking up on both what the guys in Abergavenny were doing, because they would have, when we go down there, they'd have best different kind of car.
Yeah, all credit to them, because that was the catalyst. That was definitely. It's not like we were reinventing the wheel. We were just maybe making it a bit bigger.
We were making it a lot bigger. And again, touches the rally fans in us all, and again, utilising your contacts, you came up with a logo for the event, which I think was a homage. Shall we say homage to the Rally Monte Carlo?
Hang on 1 second. Funny you should mention that, Scott, because I need to scroll it across the screen because I'm only. There we go.
Do it slowly. That we could have. I remember that going back and forth between us saying, put the logo here, put that in here.
And you printed thousands of these. Thousands. They're still.
Yeah.
I could probably use them for loft insulation, but
if there are some, wait a minute, we'll get them on eBay. I might buy me the odd slot car. Don't worry. But it was a mission, and so the actual event, it was two people. One of the things I remember was people arriving. So there was a kind of a swap meet going on for people, but there was also all these stages and a whole bunch of people wanting to enter this event. And the first thing they had to do was go into one of our big meeting rooms where we had various tables set up for people doing, what's scrutineering. What's your name, what you're doing, checking the cars for. I don't know what we were checking the cars for.
Just making sure that they hadn't been, I don't know, whatever. But yeah, there were rules, and that I guess like everything, you have to make some rules, and that was quite complicated. But again, we used the Abergavenny sort of basis for that. But most of them were stock, like you said, and you could race in the Carrera class and win some handsome prizes, to be honest, and people did. So.
Yeah, no, and it was, which then, of course, the other great tradition of a rally, as I remember them from the ones I went to in the 80s, this is proper rallies with real cars, was a prize giving ceremony where there was a kind of relatively endless, because we had all these classes and it was first, second, and third in every class. There was a kind of reading out, so and so was won this, and so.
It was like a Toys R Us warehouse dump, wasn't it? And there was just prizes everywhere. It was great. I mean, fantastic. It was good.
It was, there's some lovely happy people coming out the back who never won anything on a slot car track before. Who would come home with a big set or something that you got them. Again, one of the I don't remember any. I'm going to say trouble's the wrong word for it. I don't remember the memory, which of course fades out all the other. I just remember this lovely sunlit days of happy playing with toy cars sort of thing.
And you overfilling the water splash.
Well, the water splash is worth a mention, because even today, when I occasionally put that picture up, you get everybody go, you can't possibly do that. I go, well, we did. I'm not going to claim credit for the idea for the water splash, but you can definitely claim credit for building it, because you did physically build it.
I think it might still be in Wales. I mean, we gave it to Wales, so I think they might still have it. I don't know if it's still.
I haven't used it recently, so if it is still down there, it doesn't get used. And I know it divided opinion. So just to explain again how. So again, real rallying, the water splash, one of the most iconic pictures of any rally, particularly Rally GB, which was kind of what we were, but was the car going through water. So there was whoever came up had the idea. You were then tasked with building a water splash for.
There was. I think there was some black and white photos rolling around of some club, and I want to say bizarrely some club in Norway or something, where they had a 4-lane track which they basically built on top of bin bags and then sunk it down into some water, and everybody said, "Oh, you can't do that. You can't do that." La-di-da-di-da. And then I said, "Well, yeah, you can. We just use deionized water. Fine." Right, okay, let's make it work. So we proved I can't remember how we proved it, but it's, everybody runs, or not everybody, but lots of people run their motors in water, don't they? So it's going to work.
Only the people who take it seriously.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, some weirdos. Anyway, so we said, right, well, let's make a water splash. And again, like all these things, it sounds quite easy. Yeah, we're just going to put some track in some water and put a little loop on it, and that'll be that. But again, you've got to think, people are going to want to take photos, So we made it quite good. So I remember just getting an 8x4 sheet, cutting a hole in it, sinking the track down lower, and then thinking, right, how do I fill this thing up without it leaking? Because it's going to be there all weekend. So I then had to fiberglass the whole thing. And the whole thing was fiberglass to make it waterproof. Then we fixed all the track down, and then we put all the scenic stuff on. And there was like a little scenic section, probably only 1.5 meters wide by, maybe only half a meter deep. But that was a scenic bit. And then you went round another little loop around the back, which was great. And it was really good fun. And it did give some great photos. And I remember at the time, I think I had a GoPro camera or something like that, where you could set it up to do multiple shots, and I had my big digital camera and all that sort of stuff. So I was getting these big water splash photos, because I think we used it at Abergele first. I'm not quite remember. And that was great. But all the professionals, the serious racers, were saying, can I do that stage last? Because I don't want to, I don't want to ruin my tyres. And it's like, no, you just do it in the same way as everybody else. And they were going, oh no, I really want to do it last. I really want to do it. No, it was good fun. And that was good. I think that was one of the big takeaways. Like you say, whenever it comes online now, people say, oh, how'd you do that? How would you do that? But I do remember there's this picture of you with like 5 litres of deionized water. And I probably only bought 3 bottles of it. And there's this picture of you. And I'd filled it up to some sort of regulation line. There was probably some little painted watermark on.
It was probably scale. Yeah, it was probably would have been the scale depth of a Ford that rally cars would have gone through. And no, you're okay. You're still running. It's
Sorry.
So I remember going downstairs, wandering around while the event's going on, and seeing the water splash running, and the water was only, axle high or whatever. And I went, no, we need more than that, and sort of pouring more in, so it was up to kind of like, I don't know. But I swear the benefit of that was the pictures that must have been you who took them, or your camera who took them. Pictures of the slot cars with bow waves coming over the bonnets and over the thing, which just look absolutely fantastic. And that's that the abiding memory of that. And the cars were fine. I mean, I think we provided kind of hair dryers and tissues and everything for people to dry.
We did have hair dryers. I mean, talk about health and safety. Yeah, bottles of water, hair dryer, wet rag. Nothing can go wrong. But I do remember one thing. I'd fiberglassed the bit where the cars went into the water. But then when they come up and out of the water, it was just timber. And I think it was SCX or old Skeletrix track. And I remember somebody ringing me, somebody sort of saying on the event, oh, Gareth, the water splash is leaking. And I thought, I don't think so. I mean, it's fiberglass. It should be fine. What I hadn't really factored in was, I don't know, 200 cars going through this, dragging the water out onto the wooden bit. And yes, it was leaking onto your carpet in your offices, in the cafe or something like that downstairs. And we had to sort of go around and a bit of gaffer tape here and a bit of gaffer tape there and a bin bag here. But it was...
Well, actually, what I thought you were going to say was, because you'd very carefully constructed this, as you say, the water splash was like an S bend under the water and little reeds beside it, and it climbed and came down either side, and then there was a track higher up, which we thought was going to be the easy bit. But because the cars brought the water through, the track became soaking. So the cars had no trouble going through the water splash, but climbing up the ramp and going along the bit was actually where it was really tricky. It became a much tougher challenge than it seemed. No, it was very, very good stuff. Probably, as I suspected, once we got going on this, we could go for too long, but we may come back to it. But given that it was, I think, even before the end of the first or the second day, you were being approached by people saying, do it again, do another one.
Yeah.
Which you quite rightly said, no.
No. I mean, yeah, it was a hell of a job. And, like all these things, you need a few key people. And there were lots of volunteers. And the problem is with all these events, volunteers on the day, they're helpful. They come along, they help, they do what they're asked to do, and everybody's happy. It's not actually that bit. It's all the stuff that goes before it. And it just became a bit of a monster in terms of running an event. But stupidly, again, probably your suggestion, it did carry on, but not as an event. I mean, from that event spawned the Slot Rally GB Championship, which was, again, logistically interesting, but mainly run by the clubs, and I was just basically the glue that held it together and put the scores up on Slot Forum, I think it was at the time. So it did spawn into that, and I think that carried on for 2 or 3 years, I think. I want to say
more than that, because the Slot Rally GB, the big event we've been talking about, was 2006.
Right.
I'm sure I've seen sort of event posters which you designed for.
Yeah, I'm looking at
individual rallies in 2013.
I've got 2010 ones there, and I don't know what the other ones. What's that one? 2000. So I'm looking at Slot. Oh, here we go. So I'm looking at. You're going to have to excuse me. I'm not going to do an unboxing because I know you hate those. But that was the Scalextrics car Slot Rally GB. Well, car from the 25th anniversary event. That was they made 50 of those, and then. That was the car, which was a team slot, obviously
Team Slot Sleeker,
for the Slot Rally GB, the second event. And then thereafter that, however many years we did it, I started getting limited edition cars made for the championship, which was good. So there's probably only about 50 of these made. And then we had, again, gold, silver, bronze ones for the championship winners. So not bizarrely, they're some of the few slot cars that I've still kept, and they're in the cabinet behind the camera. So they're there. But that was another thing that was quite good fun, was getting manufacturers to make all these cars, whether they were just plain white, and I sat there like the first one, sticking decals on for hours and hours and hours, and wishing I'd never done it, and then doing it all again. And then finally, I'm looking at it now, Team Slot said, don't need to do decals, Gareth, we will tampo print them. And it's like, oh, thank you. Yeah, so I remember just sending them the artwork, and they came back, thank you very much. And they've got, it's difficult to see, I can't really show this on the camera very well, but listed on the top here is all the rallies that we did in 2012. So it's an AEC rally, that was the SCX distributor, Steve. Wolverhampton, Manx, flyaway stages.
Flyaway, overseas. Yeah.
Overseas, yeah. Y Valley, obviously, summer stages. Oxford, Pedro's club. PSR, rally stages, Pendle.
Yeah.
Farnham, obviously, centre of the universe. And then the final one was the Y Valley Winter Rally. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 rallies. which is not bad.
It's not bad. Well, I think it's held in great affection. Actually, lots of people still say they remember it well and they want to do it. So, I think great credit to you for putting it. It's all very well me or anyone else going, why don't we do this? But you kind of stitched it all together and made it happen. And clearly, as you've outlined, cajoled lots of people to do things.
There's lots of other people. Yeah. Again, the NSCC, without them, we wouldn't have been able to do it. And then, these things mushroom, don't they? And again, like I say, at that time, I guess it was a sort of slot car forum in its infancy. And that was helpful.
That was a key part. I think, the forum was probably 3-4 years old when the first event was happening. And the significance to remember that was it meant people who were into slot cars who could otherwise be completely isolated. They might live 5 miles from a slot car club, but they wouldn't know it. And it actually brought everybody together. So it meant an event like that was actually a physical gathering point for all these people who'd kind of got to know.
I mean, the other thing, sorry to interrupt, Scott. I was going to say, I think one of the reasons that I really liked doing the slot rally bits as opposed to the races, and we went to lots of races. We did the 24-hour things, didn't we? We used to go on these big...
Well, we didn't quite. We broke down before.
Detail. But, we went to all these races and they were good fun. But obviously there were people there that were considerably better than us, far better prepared, la-di-da-di, whatever. But what I really liked about the slot rally events, all of them, and the big show and all that kind of thing, is you went around in little groups and you helped each other, you marshalled each other, you chatted, took the mickey out of each other, repaired cars, whatever we had to do. And it's actually quite social. And I think that was the thing, because I think slot car racing can be quite sort of solitary, even if you're at a club, because, you rise down and tunnel vision and whatever. But the slot rally events, it seemed to be more social. There was more chatting and it was good fun. And that, I think, is really good. I really like that.
I agree. And I think the format is better than I mean, I've been to a few things where there's, races and things, and I'm no good. And it's fine. That's just not my thing. The beauty of doing a slot rally is you do all of it. Everybody does all of it. The guy who wins has done exactly the same distance as the guy who came last. Yeah. There's none of this, you haven't won your heat, or you can now sit down and these guys are going to have finals and stuff. Yeah. So you're involved for the entirety of the thing, and like real rallying, it's it takes its time, and there's kind of something to watch. Yeah. So I think the reason, not just because our Spanish brothers are mad keen on rallying and mad keen on slot cars, and therefore it's a marriage made in heaven for them. And certainly, even to these days, I look at the pictures that come out of some of the events over there, and it's gobsmacking. But the scale is
still no idea how to set up a slot car for running in flour or whatever it is they use. Witchcraft.
Actually, did we? No, I won't. Did we not have some?
Well, we didn't have any. I don't think we had. Oh, did we? We probably did. We probably did get the dust.
I think we
put some flour on one of them, and it probably went horribly wrong. But even so, it's still, when they do it and you watch them all slow motion sliding around these tracks, you think, yeah, that looks pretty good fun. But anyway.
Fantastic. Next time. Okay, I'm going to stop there because we'll go on and on. So thank you for that, and thank you for listening, as I hope you have been if you get to listen to this bit. I might convince Gareth to talk more, because one of the other great interesting things about Gareth is he had a huge slot car collection, and he doesn't have it anymore because he lost let's use a religious, he lost the faith. And it's replaced by plastic idols, which, if those are watching on YouTube will able to see, he's a big Tintin figure collector now. But I think it's interesting for those of us who are still deeply entrenched in the addiction to buying toy cars with electric motors in them, that you had this enviable collection, some of which I managed to get from you. But then you kind of almost overnight, on the Too Much Express, almost overnight, fairly quickly anyway. So we might come back and talk about that, because I think that's an interesting side to it. Anyway, Thank you, Gareth. Thank you for that, and thanks for listening, everybody. And we'll see you again next time. Oh.